Welcome back to our discussions of the Declaration, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. I am Larry Swikart, co-author of A Patriot's History of the United States with Michael Allen, and founder of The Wild World of History. So you want to go to our website, wildworldofhistory.com, and see all the wonderful things we have to offer there. My topic today is the U.S. Constitution, the overview, and Article 1. And I will do this the same way I did the Declaration of Independence, namely I'm going to read through it and then make comments on it as we advance through the various texts. So let me just start with the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The first thing we want to note here is that it is the people of the United States, not the states, that do ordain and establish the Constitution. Now, does this mark a change from Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence? No. In the Declaration, Jefferson said it was one people that was dissolving the political bands, and then concludes, in the name and by the authority of the people of these colonies. So the people were the energizing operational force, not the colonies or the states. Second, note that this is the preamble. It is the purpose for understanding, but it is not the means of doing it. That is, the Constitution itself is the means of achieving the goal stated in the preamble. So, in other words, the purpose is to, let's say, pay your bills so that you live without worry. The means by which you do so, nevertheless, has to be within the law. You can't pay your bills by stealing from others. Bills must be sent to certain places with a check in the right amount that has a signature at the bottom, and so on. These are the means by which you accomplish the purpose or the end stated in the preamble. It's common today for people to quote the preamble as though it were the means. For the founders, you could achieve those ends of domestic tranquility, etc., only by following the rules which are in the Articles. So let us begin with the Articles. Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Section 2. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people, there's that word again, the people, of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. In other words, every state has electors based on the state house, not on the Senate, assuming that the state house has more members than the state Senate, which is the case in almost all the states of the United States. And to be an elector, you have to at least be eligible to be a state representative. Let's continue. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. This is self-explanatory. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of freed persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantation 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. Long section. What does that all mean? This derives from the famous 3/5 compromise, where 3 out of every 5 slaves, note that they didn't use the term slave, but persons, quote, bound to service, would be counted for the apportionment of direct taxes. Later, after Hamilton's fiscal policy was adopted, the United States relied heavily on import duties, tariffs, for revenue, and having the states pay these taxes fell by the wayside. In other words, the main source of revenue became tariffs, not the specific taxes noted in the 3/5 compromise. So the southern states greatly benefited from this structure, as they received additional representatives, those persons bound to service, for example, of 3/5 of the slaves, but never had to pay taxes based on those increased numbers. Note also that the U.S. Constitution says nothing about the method in which these representatives were chosen, leaving it up to the states to apportion themselves. There is no residency rule in the Constitution for House members, although states may have one. Let's continue. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. So, over time, the states come up with either governor appointments for short periods or special elections to replace vacancies. The House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Note, there is no requirement that the Speaker of the House of Representatives is from the House of Representatives. Representatives may choose whomever they want, even outside of government. In cases of impeachment, the House is to determine whether or not the president or judge in question has committed what are called high crimes and misdemeanors. These are not laid out in any detail in the Constitution and are assumed to include normal crimes, but also special crimes against the government or the nation, as it were, i.e., high crimes. These may not be in the criminal code. In short, the Constitution permits the House of Representatives to impeach a president over anything. It could be entirely and only political. It could be jaywalking. It could be anything. Thus, no impeachment in American history has ever involved a House passing articles of impeachment against a president of the same party. Imagine that. In 2019, a Democrat Congress passed articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump, who was acquitted by the U.S. Senate in 2020. But then after the Patriot Day, January 6th protests, I call it Patriot Day, the Democrats passed a second impeachment bill against Trump, in which he was acquitted a second time. Trump has become the only president in American history twice acquitted of articles of impeachment, indicating the entirely political aspect of the process. By bringing the second set of articles, let alone the first, the House has made impeachment a more or less meaningless exercise. Section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. In 1913, the 17th Amendment to the Constitution was adopted, providing the direct election of U.S. senators. This has been very controversial, and many conservatives say it was a mistake, and that it turned the Senate into simply a bigger House of Representatives. However, other analysts have pointed to the makeup of the state legislatures and argued that there would have been very little, if any, difference in whom was selected over time. Indeed, state legislatures often bickered so much about the selection of a seat that they left some Senate seats open for months at a time, denying the citizens of that state representation in the Senate. Back to the text. Immediately after they, the senators, shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, of the second class at the expiration of the 4th year, and the third class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year, and if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. Okay, what does this mean? The founders created the Constitution above all to make change difficult, to ensure that they created separation of powers based on the ideas of Charles de Montesquieu. The members of the House were elected every 2 years. The senators served every 6 years, but 1/3 of the Senate came up for re-election every 2 years. Contrast this with the 4-year term of the president and the lifetime terms of the Supreme Court justices. In other words, the founders wanted to make it as difficult as possible to change government, but not on a whim of passion in a single election. They wanted to make sure that there was a slow transition. Next phrase. No person shall be a senator who has not attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he is chosen. Recently, the spirit of this has been tested as when, in 2000, Hillary Clinton, wife of former President Bill Clinton, relocated from Arkansas to New York solely for the purpose of running for the U.S. Senate seat. This made a mockery of the residency rule, but the people of New York elected her anyway, and after all, the people are sovereign. The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. In other words, the Vice President who presides over the Senate votes only in case of a tie. The Senate shall choose their other officers and also a president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president or when he shall exercise the office of President of the United States. So the Senate, like the House, makes its own rules. The Senate shall have sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside. No person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Okay, let's unpack this a little bit. This is very important, and we've had 3 impeachments, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, and in no case did the Senate follow its constitutional responsibilities. The Senate's role is to try the case. It is not to decide whether or not the charges brought rise to the level of high crimes or misdemeanors. That's the House's responsibility. But nevertheless, in all 3 cases, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, basically the Senate has done just that. It has adjudged whether or not the charges rise to the level of high crimes or misdemeanors, not whether or not the president's committed these acts. So in Andrew Johnson's case, he clearly violated the Tenure of Office Act. He deliberately violated the Tenure of Office Act, yet they said, well, that doesn't really rise to the level of high crimes or misdemeanors, and they acquitted him. In Bill Clinton's case, he clearly violated the laws that were brought up, the articles of impeachment. And yet the Senate again said, no, we don't think that really rises to the level of high crimes. And in the case of Donald Trump, he did not violate these laws, but nevertheless, the Senate took it upon himself to say, no, we don't think these are high crimes or misdemeanors. So the Senate, in all three major impeachment cases, has exceeded its constitutional responsibilities. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold or enjoy any office or honor, trust, or profit under the United States, but the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. In other words, if a president or a judge committed the actual crime, not just a high crime, against government, they could be prosecuted criminally after leaving office. Section 4. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Each house may determine the rules of the proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and, with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. So what does this mean? This has in recent times become a license for corruption. In the early 1990s, the House had allowed members to write bad checks on the House bank, especially defrauding taxpayers. The public outrage on this was so great that the Democrats, who were in a majority at that time, were thrown out of power, and the Republicans put in for the first time in 40 years. More recently, the party in power refuses to prosecute its own corruption, save when a member is at odds with the majority of the party's members. In short, any corrupt member of a majority party, see, for example, Charles Rangel, Democrat, New York, who had been guilty of a variety of crimes, to be removed. Censored, maybe, never removed, because that would reduce their vote in the House. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings from time to time, publish the same, excepting such parts as may, in their judgment, require secrecy, and the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered into the journal. Now, often a party will try to keep their votes quiet. They won't want to have a member voice vote, whereby you would have to list your votes member by member, ayes or nays, because they don't want that to be used in the next election against them. And so you'll often see jockeying to keep some votes off the record. Neither house, during the session of Congress, shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor any other place than that which the two houses shall be sitting. Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services, to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases, except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance in the session of their respective houses and in going to and returning from the same. And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall be created, or the emoluments thereof shall have been increased during such time, and no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. Basically, the Congress of the United States sets its own pay, and this has been a matter of great concern, and you can't have a second job while you're a senator or a representative. However, you can be lobbied very heavily by various people and be rewarded in all sorts of other ways, say stock portfolios. Section 7. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments on other bills. Every bill shall have passed the House of Representatives, and the Senate shall, before it becomes a law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he, the President, approves, he shall sign it, but not if he shall return it with the objections to that House to which it shall have been originated, who shall enter the objections at large in their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsideration 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with those objections to the other House, which shall likewise be recommended, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. But in such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, by the names of the person voting it. There it is again with the names. For or against the bill be entered into the journal of each House respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, it shall have been presented to him. The same shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress, by their adjournment, prevent its return, in which case it shall not be a law. Now, what does all this mean? So, all funding bills must start in the House of Representatives. This was a big deal in Obamacare because this bill started in the Senate. Second of all, whenever you send any bill to the President, he can accept it and sign it, or he can reject it and veto it, in which case a veto can be overridden by 2/3 of the members of both the House and the Senate. Or he can do what's called a pocket veto. If Congress is about to run out of its session, about to expire, go home, he can put the bill in his desk drawer and not do anything with it, and because Congress has gone out of session, it has to start all over again in the next session. So there's 3 options with any bill. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the Senate shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations prescribed by the case of a bill. So what does all this mean? It means that you have to have the President in general agreement with a law. Otherwise, you're going to need 2/3 to override a presidential veto. Same thing occurs when Congress goes out of session. A president can make appointments during that time while they are out of sessions. Now, these appointments are highly controversial, and President Obama made a number of these that were a problem. So these recess appointments are so controversial that often there is no recess. What happens is that you have a pro forma session of the Senate or the House all the time. And that means that you have one member of the House or the Senate who will come in and basically be there just so they're open for business, so a president like Trump could not make recess appointments. Section 8. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. There's that clause from the preamble again. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. In other words, you can't lay a tax or an excise on Massachusetts and not also lay it on Texas. Continuing Section 8. These are, by the way, the responsibilities and authorities of Congress. Congress shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Some of us wish they wouldn't borrow quite so much money. Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Congress shall have the power to establish an uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. To coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. Now, this has become a little controversial because the phrase to coin money is thought by some to mean only to coin gold or silver specie, not to print money. However, over the years, in a number of cases, basically the Supreme Court has ruled no, this includes any kind of money that Congress wants to mint or coin. Congress has the power to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities in current coin of the United States. So, counterfeiting at the time of the Revolution took place mostly in the form of paper money. So this is one of these clauses that suggests that Congress has the authority to authorize the printing of paper money. Congress has the authority to establish post offices and post roads, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. I benefit from that because these are patent laws and copyright laws that benefit authors. Congress has the authority to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, i.e., other federal courts, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the laws of nations. Congress has the authority to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and to make rules concerning captures on land and water. This is interesting because very few people talk about the letters of marque and reprisal. But it is thought that if a president is not willing to punish pirates at sea, for example, Congress has the authority to set up a letter of marque and reprisal and say to private merchant ships, which might be armed, that you have the authority to go after these people on the high seas. And it became the basis of a very thrilling Vince Flynn novel. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for longer term than 2 years. To provide and maintain a navy. To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. You notice something there? The militias are different than the standing armies. So when we get to the Bill of Rights and we get to the Second Amendment and a well-regulated militia, this is not the standing army. It's very clear the two are separate. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them, the militia, that may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of their officers and authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. So, we have standing armies and we have militias. And the militias are to be raised by the states, commanded by officers appointed by the states, and regulated by the states. They are not the standing army. This is very important when we get to the second bill in the Bill of Rights, second article in the Bill of Rights. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needed buildings. Now, this concerns what we call the District of Columbia. Note, they didn't say which state the District of Columbia was to come from. At the time, the government was residing in Philadelphia. Later, we're going to see that the District of Columbia comes from a compromise between the Jeffersonians, known as the Republicans, and those supporting Washington and Hamilton, known as the Federalists. And the deal was this. The Republicans would agree to Alexander Hamilton's fiscal policy, which included tariffs. And in return, the District of Columbia was to be moved to Virginia. Now, the reason that the Virginians thought they got the best of that deal was they thought they were going to be able to go up to the Congress and lobby the Congress in person to harass people and basically make sure that they got the upper hand in legislation. In fact, what has happened over time is that because of the tremendous number of government employees in the District of Columbia and in nearby Virginia, the government, the federal government, has taken over the state of Virginia. And it's very hard for Virginia to get out of the grips of the federal government due to the District of Columbia and its surrounding environs. And Congress has the authority to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. So, folks, this is the famous necessary and proper clause. Basically, the founder said, we don't know all the stuff that's going to be required to make government run, so we're going to say that whatever is necessary and proper to make government run, Congress has the authority to outline and pass legislation regarding that. And some of the first things that will happen under this necessary and proper clause are that George Washington will say, I need some help. I need a cabinet. And so the House and the Senate would approve a cabinet that isn't even mentioned in the Constitution to assist President Washington. Section 9. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. What are they talking about? They're talking about slaves. This is the slave trade. And Congress said, we're not going to touch the slave trade till 1808. Okay, so this was basically one of the compromises to get the Constitution passed by the slave states. The privilege or the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. Habeas corpus is make the body appear. Okay, present the body. And in this case, it has to do with you are not able, the government is not permitted to lock people up without bringing them up for a charge. You can't just hold them in solitary confinement for months at a time without having a charge. You've got to present the body in front of the court and charge them. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. What's an ex post facto law? Back in the day when we had a very funny comedy called All in the Family, Archie Bunker, who was the lead character, would always talk about ipso fatso, right? But ex post facto means after the fact. You can't pass a law today that will make what you did yesterday illegal. So you can say, oh, you did this yesterday, we're going to go arrest you. Well, it wasn't a law yesterday, right? So that's what that is. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. So remember we had that 3/5 clause regarding taxation. No direct tax shall be laid. The only place you're going to get your taxes is from that 3/5 compromise, right? No direct tax shall be laid. What's a direct tax? The income tax, folks. This says you shall not have an income tax. It's in the Constitution. So why do we have an income tax today? Because they passed an amendment saying you can have an income tax, the 16th Amendment. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. Get that? Nothing produced in the United States can be taxed when it is exported. No preference shall be given to any regulation or commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. So this prohibits you from taxing anything in one state over another state. All taxes have to be uniform and applied to everyone. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in consequence or appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures, and all public money shall be published from time to time. In other words, you can't be borrowing money from the treasury and nobody know about it, right? You've got to publish that. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office or profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. So we have no nobility in America, and you can't accept a title of nobility like the prince of that or the duke of that from any king or foreign state. Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder ex post facto law or law impairing obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. What's that? They're just saying no state can do those things we just outlined that only Congress can do. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws. And the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress. So again, states are not authorized to levy export duties or import duties, only the United States Congress. And last, no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in times of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will admit of delay. Now, this is very interesting because coming up, I'm going to discuss something called the CONCON, the Constitutional Convention. And in the CONCON, the states agree to meet in a constitutional convention, but that's approved by Article 5 of the Bill of Rights. However, we now have circulating various agreements among the states that they will give their electoral votes only to the winner of the national popular vote. And this clause appears to say that is not constitutional, nor is it permitted. The reason it hasn't been brought up yet is one of ripeness, R-I-P-E-N-E-S-S. That is, courts will not take a case that is not ripe, ready to be decided. Courts do not act on hypotheticals. So, all of these states that say they're going to give their electoral votes to the winner of the popular vote, that's not going to be an issue until you have enough states to determine the presidency of the United States. And if that happens, where enough states say we're going to give our electoral votes to the popular vote winner, you would probably see a court change in that. And so that is Article 1 of the United States Constitution. I am Larry Swikart with Wild World of History, co-author of A Patriot's History of the United States with Michael Allen.